Okay, so here we go. Screenplay 101. So there's like a lot of words and stuff like that, but I will send a link to this PowerPoint so you don't have to like stress out about taking notes and stuff right now, because I mean, a lot of formatting is like just nitpicky stuff, but I'm also going to try to add like how to come up with your own, like how to plan your stories and stuff like that. Okay, so two really useful tools for planning your script are treatments and beat sheets, and as well as outlines. So before I go like deep dive into beat sheets and treatments, I'm going to give like a little overview of what the difference between these things are. So an outline is kind of like whatever you want it to be. Like usually just the writer is going to see it. It could be bullet points, note cards, you can draw it, but it's basically to get the story like out, and like you could take what you like and put it in your script, or you could just throw out whatever doesn't make sense. And now beat sheets are like the skeleton of your screenplay, and they have like every important thing that happens, as well as it being in the order that it happens. So while your outline might be like, this is the whole like murder mystery, the beat sheet's gonna show like how people are actually gonna see that, your story like progress on film. And then treatments. So sometimes treatments are written before you write a script as a helpful tool to help you develop your script. And sometimes they're written afterwards if you're trying to sell your script and the person who was trying to buy it from you doesn't want to read your entire script unless there's like proof that it's going to be interesting. So basically a treatment is like, if you're writing a short film, it's usually 1 to 3 pages. And if you're writing a feature, it's usually 2 to 6 pages. And there's 4 more like main elements. The title, and of course can change throughout like your whole production process. Your logline, which I have a slide about that because those are very tricky little beasts. Your key characters, like literally just the name, age, and then something about their appearance or their personality, and then the plot summary. And this doesn't have to be written in script format. It'd be written like in paragraphs, but it's still in third person and present tense, which is how a script is written. Okay, so a logline this is kind of helpful if you're creating a treatment or if you're making like a visual guide for yourself, for your story. If you're collecting images, this is just like a good like first slide for you to look at every time you're like a little bit lost. And also it's a good way, it's like an elevator pitch. If you meet someone and you're saying, oh, I'm writing a script, what is it about? You could just say this one sentence. But it's very hard because it's usually generally just 1 sentence, maybe 2, that aims to convey your genre, the story, your main character, what journey they're going to go through, how they're going to transform the conflict, all these stuff. So it's definitely one of the challenges of writing treatment. So here are a couple like good examples. 2 young lovers associated with rival gangs in the slums of New York try to escape the bigotry and violence that surrounds them. I don't know why it says M2, to find a better life. That's West Side Story. A weatherman finds himself living the same day over and over again. That's Groundhog's Day, I hope. And then an 8-year-old boy who is accidentally left behind while his family flies to France for Christmas has to defend his home against idiotic burglars, which is Home Alone. So all of these, they're different lengths. They're all 1 sentence, but they introduce the character and the conflict, and also kind of like a hint on what like antics the character are gonna get into. Okay, so the beat sheet is a whole nother beast. I have many slides on this that you can look at your own leisurely pace. I'll go through them right now, but this beat sheet are, depending on who you ask, depending on which like script writing class you're in, I've had teachers say vastly different things of what beats are. Some people say they're just the emotional, every time there's an emotional change or tonal change in a scene, that's a beat. Or some people say when you're looking at the structure of a film, it's like every important action. But in this case, for this PowerPoint, it's going to be not as much the emotional changes, even though those will be like a part of it. It's more of like all the important actions that will make up your script. And kind of the like one beat sheet to rule them all is by Blake Snyder, who wrote like a bunch of script writing books and has taught a bunch of script writing classes. And generally it's designed for you to have like 40 to 50 beats, which are just like basically bullet points or like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like a list of all the actions, which are opening image, theme, stated, setup. These are each like 2 to 3 or 4 like beats that build up usually for a feature. So I'm just gonna go through, there's a lot of them. So the opening image is like your audience's first impression. It sets the tone, the mood, and the genre for your movie. And this is also the same with a short story script. I recently watched Princess and the Frog, like Disney, because we just got Disney Plus. And this was like a great example is like the first, like the third shot, it shows like Tiana and her mom who's like working like class, and the opened on the book is like the story of like the frog princess. So like it shows that like fantasy is like a part of these people's, like they're in their mind space. This is the era they're in. This is the like the class differences that we're going to be dealing with. Theme stated setup. I'm going to use Princess Frog as an example again. They immediately show the theme of like there's going to be transformations like physical, like into a frog, but maybe that's also emotional. And then the next scene is like a scene of family and love, which is basically Tiana's like battle throughout the whole thing. I don't know why this is on top of my mind because we just watched it. That and like Onward and Star Wars, of course, because it was just Star Wars Day. So we have the catalyst, which is also called the inciting incident. And this is probably like, if you're gonna go through for the common like story arc, that's like in every story that's gonna have like a journey. This is talking about all like the traditional sense of like a narrative. So that inciting incident is the thing that triggers your character to leave their normal life and go on a journey that will eventually change them and their world. Debate. Character debates whether or not they should go on this journey. Pretty simple. Break into Act 2. So that's when the journey starts, and you discover the world that's different from the character has been living in. Because before you start watching this movie, you just assume the character has been living the same life that you see in the first act. Like that's normalcy. The rest is because, like, for example, especially for fantasies or sci-fi movies, you don't know what the normal, if you jump straight into like the chaos, you might assume this is what the story is always like. So it's really important to set up the normal. B story, again, classical narrative. You don't have to follow this. This is just generally, you'll see most stories follow this, is an introduction of a love interest and, or a B plot line that still intertwines with the main theme. Then we have fun and games. These are all the actual like titles that are used for this type of beat sheet. But it's basically like the part of the story that's gonna go in the trailers, that's gonna go in the poster. It's what the audience came to see the movie for, and it's exploring the new world. We have the midpoint, which is either like, oh, the character got what they thought the goal was, or it's like, oh, nothing is going as planned. We have the bad guys close in, classic Marvel movie. Everything looks like it's like the Thanos or whatever are going to defeat everyone. And then the sad moment, maybe a character like died and everyone's sad. That's all is lost. And then Dark Night of the Soul is a fancy way to say that the character's reacting to this like downfall. And then we break into Act 3, which is where finally the A story, like the main character arc, and the B story, maybe the love interest, intertwine, and that intertwining helps them figure out how to defeat the bad guy. Then we have the finale where they kill Thanos or whatever is going on. This could be emotional. Like maybe the person finally asks out their like crush or something like that. You could scale it however you want. And then the final image is like the opposite of the opening image, that it shows the new normal. So that's like a basic, oh, I don't know if this is, oh, we have a a new person joining us. Daniela Pearl. Hello. I don't know if they're, okay. Just give me a little thumbs up emoji or a chat if you can hear everything well. Oh, awesome. Okay, good. So Daniela, I just went over the base. I'm Yasaman Ford. I'm a Camp Real Stories alum and UCLA film major. I just was going over the classic story structure, and I will share these slides with you if you want to go over them. But yeah, now we're actually going into my favorite part is the formatting of writing scripts. Okay, so industry standard. You might have heard this before, you might have not heard this before, but this is for any industry. So it's the standard that means the usual or the customary practices of the delivery of products or services within a particular business sector. So a lot of I don't know, when you think movies, you definitely think of art and creativity, but it's also still an industry, and there's certain expectations both for safety purposes and just for the industry to function smoothly and efficiently, because it is about for many people making money. So here's the general formatting of creating a script. It's a lot to open a Word document and set all of these for you, set all these margins and stuff for you, but luckily, there's a bunch of both browser and downloadable programs that you can, once you know what the formatting is supposed to be in your head, you just do a drop down and you say what type of thing you want to add, and it'll format it for you. So Final Draft is very expensive. It's the industry standard, but Celtex, which I use a lot, and you get 3 scripts free, but you could just keep putting in more emails, getting more scripts. Writer, Duet, and Studio Binder are all ones that I've heard that are free and browser-based, which could be a little bit annoying if your internet is poor, but I think Studio Binder you can actually download. Okay, so here, let's go into the anatomy of a script. We got page number, which, fun fact, only starts on the 2nd page. So page 1 is just not labeled. We got the slug line or the scene header. Oops, I'm gonna use my little pointer. We got the action, which is gonna be the bulk of your film. We have character name and the dialogue and transitions, but let's go into each of these specifically. So slug line / scene heading. So the slug line or a scene heading, it has a very specific format, and that goes at the beginning of every scene. And it always starts with int or ext, which means interior or exterior, and that's where your scene takes place. Then we have a very short title of the place that you're gonna be in, and then if it's night or day. And then again, depending on which script writing or book or teacher you have, they're gonna tell you either just put night or day, don't put anything else. But other people are you can go super specific and say a specific time if it's important for your script. Or you could say evening, morning. And then my favorite thing, I don't know why I like this so much, is continuous. If something is broken up and you need to show that it's technically a different scene, but it's at the same time. Which goes into, oh, my slideshow. Okay, which goes into when does a scene change? When you're watching a film, sometimes it can be kind of invisible when a scene changes, but technically a scene changes whenever there's a change in location or time. So for example, here, even though it happens one after another, Poppy brushes her teeth and leaves the bathroom, Poppy enters the hallway and slips on a sock, it visually looks like it's continuous, but because you switch from her bathroom into the halls, it's a new scene. Same with time, even though she's sleeping in her bed and then she wakes up, it's in the same location, but there's a time jump, so you have to change the scene. Okay, let's go into dialogue. If there's any questions, you could just unmute yourself and shout it out, because I know I was like, you can't raise hands because I can't see half of you, so it's okay. Okay, so dialogue. There's a couple like little fun formatting. I don't know, formatting's so exciting to me because it's something that like once you get down, like you can't mess up, and then, but whereas like writing a story is, there's so many ways to do it, but like formatting is like, here's one thing that you know you can do. So OS means off screen and VO means voiceover. So for this first example, Linda says, does anyone want a piece of pizza? And it says OS. So that might mean that you're actually, your camera is on like a different room with like a different person, but you hear Linda from the other room off screen. And that's different from voiceover, because voiceover might be like commonly in like a documentary or something like that, or maybe the TV is talking to you. And then we have CONT down, a little apostrophe D. That's just continuing a line of dialogue. So if your character has a long paragraph of dialogue, but they're doing something while they're speaking, it might be broken up by a line of action, but you want to convey to whoever's going to create your script that doesn't mean that they're pausing their talk. They're still talking, they're just doing this stuff at the same time. And then the last thing is parentheticals. And parentheticals are the little parentheses that go below the character name that kind of explain or describe how the character is saying something. And we'll talk a little bit later about why you shouldn't try not to use those. So writing dialogue do's and don'ts. While your script, like action, should absolutely have correct grammar and spelling, because that would just give an excuse to whoever is reading it to kind of discard it if you have incorrect grammar and spelling, which I'm very bad at. So have lots of people proofread it for you and give you feedback. If you have a character who has like a lisp, or a character who's like a kid and doesn't know correct like grammar, like me, basically you could play with your dialogue however you want, along with like accents. Or you can, in parentheticals or in your like action, you could just say, oh, this character has a British accent, without having to like type stuff out to make it sound like it has a British accent. I suggest you read your dialogue out loud to yourself to see if it sounds natural, unless of course you're trying to make like a robot character or someone that's not supposed to sound natural. And then try to break tropes that are common in the film industry. Dialogue is a great like fast way to convey character. So maybe your character's appearance is kind of stereotypical of some type of like stereotype, but how they interact with the world and speak with others kind of goes against that. Avoid exposition. That's like a very, especially I feel like with short scripts, which I have more experience with, it's easy but hard to convey a bunch of information in a short amount of time. So the best thing to do, I think, is even to try to write your whole short script without any dialogue, so that you can be sure that you're not using dialogue to explain the story, instead of being like, the mom walks in and says like, oh, like, I'm so like, and explains the whole like conflict, every character. Try to do it with just visuals first. And yeah, also try to avoid having a bunch of pages of dialogue with no actions. This is again dependent on your style. Maybe you do like a lot of dialogue, but generally, because it's like a screenplay for films instead of a play, it's more usual to lean more on like using actions to convey your story than dialogue. Okay, speaking of actions, here's a little bit about action formatting. The first time a character appears in your script, they should be in all caps, and it's common to also put their age in parentheses. Any important sound effects or special effects are also in all caps. And then anytime like an important item is mentioned, should be on all caps. Does not have to happen every time, but usually just like the characters capitalized like the first time, so is an important object. And then also dialogue is not written in action unless things it's like a note or signs. And most other things that aren't just obvious, like a character speaking, a note, like the internet is a great place to just Google, how do I format this specific type of thing? Okay, so writing for film versus theater. So I've never written for theater, but I took acting in high school. So I've read theater plays, and there's definitely a big difference. For theaters, wait, I was gonna say something else. Oh, okay. This is it. Why every time like I start a project in the class, the teachers always ask like, why is this a film and not a theater play? Why is this a film and not like an essay? And I think it's important to like see what your other options are, so that you could like prove to yourself like, no, this got to be a movie. Like I got to get it out there as a screenplay. Okay, so obviously when you're doing a theater play, you are restricted because of the limitations of space of time. Like even though you can have a couple sets, you're not gonna like teleport around like the galaxy or something like that. So let's like take advantage of the film medium. So I wrote 2 small blurbs of the same exact scene and how it might play in a theater script versus a screenplay. So writing for theater. Stage set. The backdrop is painted to show the inside of a living room. A couch and a TV are on the stage. Narrator. Here we have Linda Aziz, a 40-year-old woman with a back problem and an insatiable desire for salt and vinegar almonds. She's watching her favorite TV show, Extreme Patio Ponds. Linda. Oh me, oh my, how I love this show and these almonds. I wish my daughter would get back from school. She's almost an hour late. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but you know. Okay, writing for film. Interior living room 415. So that's a very specific like slug line. Linda enters the living room carrying a bowl from which she stops every few steps to eat a handful of almonds from. She sits at a worn down spot on the couch and switches on the TV without changing the channel. TV host, off screen. Today on Extreme Patio Ponds, we visit back with Miss Ann Newton and her fabulous koi collection. Linda eats another almond, checks her watch, and shakes her head. So here's a little comparison of the action to dialogue ratio. And of course, this is like very different. I tried to find like specific theater plays that had been turned into films, but it was hard to find like scripts for that. But this is how I kind of picture it in my head. Even when you have dialogue, like this is even like a prop speaking more than like the character speaking. So whereas the narrator in a theater play can explain like the background of the character, I feel like it's more satisfying, nothing against theaters. It's more satisfying for like your audience to try to figure out stuff on their own. Like they're smarter than you think they are. Okay, and then writing for film versus prose. So a screenplay, again, because film is still part of like an industry, a screenplay has to be more economical with words than a book or poetry. So the screenplay's job is basically to only write down what the audience will actually see in your film, which is very tricky, and it means you should not describe what the characters are thinking, and you shouldn't put any backstory or any other information in the action that cannot be seen. Furthermore, screenplays are almost always in present tense using active verbs. So instead of saying she is kicking her brother, and like Janie is kicking her brother, it's better to say like Jane kicks her brother, because it's more of like an action active verb. It's more visual when you're reading it. And that's the goal of a screenplay, is so that whoever's reading it will picture the movie, not necessarily reading your words. So here's a couple examples of using like introducing character or location that, wait just a sec. Okay, that shows like what you can convey in a script versus like what you shouldn't. So here we have Joker 2019. Close on Arthur 30s. Here's his description. He's trying to get it under control, his greasy black hair hanging down over his forehead. He's wearing an old faded green cardigan sweater, a threadbare gray scarf, thin from years of use, hangs loosely around his neck. And then we also have the social worker, African American. Her office is cramped on rundown and cramped and rundown building. Stacks of folders piled high in front of her. So that's like 4 lines for one character, like 2.5 lines for another character. And now we have like 6 lines that's going to convey 3 characters and the location all at once. A rolling landscape, the rustling of leaves and birdsong. Thunder rumbles in the distance. There is no rain. A figure lies against a tree, eyes closed. This is Shawfield. Early 20s, soft features. A man is sleeping next to him on the grass. Blake, 19, youthful, strapping. So neither, of course, both of these scripts were nominated. There's not like one way that's better than the other, but both of them are still in some ways economical. And also neither of them are explaining things that are happening in the characters' minds or backstory that you can't visually see. Oop. Okay, what not to put in a screenplay. You gotta know the rules to break the rules. That's one of my favorite lines to say in my head every time that artsy kid in class is like, well, I know you told us not to do this, but I'm actually gonna make this completely crazy experimental film. And like, that's great, but if you don't know what the rules are, then it's not cool that you're breaking them. It's just like ignorant. I know that's harsh. I don't actually say that to the artsy kids, but that's just a good thing to keep in mind for yourself. Like, it's more satisfying too when you're knowing that you're creating something different. Okay, so do not put, as I'm going to emphasize this a lot because I feel like it is a very common mistake and it's hard to like get out of that like habit of when you're writing like prose, you can totally put any of that. That's like the juiciest part. So here's an example. Linda Aziz, 43, a mother of 4 and professional knitter with 2 doctorates in bird behavior. So like, I would love that description in a book, but if you are watching a film and you see this woman and this is the description in the script, like what would you actually see? You would only see that woman. It doesn't tell you anything about her character unless she is knitting and holding her doctorates and there's like a bird next to her, you know, but you could put that in the script. Okay, likewise, don't write the thoughts, fears, dreams, anything else that goes in the character's head, unless like it's a dream sequence or like you're like gonna do like an inside out moment where you're zooming into their brain, you know? So Poppy remembers the last time she was in this park, she had been 4 years old. So again, like if we're picturing that on a screen, all you see is Poppy kind of going like this. And that like doesn't really tell you anything. Okay. Likewise, so this is one of my least favorite parts about writing scripts. And this is also why sometimes I'll write out, if I'm doing a short film, I'll write out the whole story in prose and then go back and write it in script format because I want to get out all of the like juicy descriptions that I want to put in the script. Because again, the script is a creative thing, but it's also like, it's like a blueprint for you and your crew and then the scriptwriter and like everyone that you're showing it to. So if they want to read like a really beautiful long version of it, you could write them the like book version, be like, here, this is everything, all my hopes and dreams. But yeah, you want to short and sweet. So the dewdrops sit on the newly blossomed roses of the park. Children play against the spring breeze and birds chirp their familiar song. Poppy and Linda sit at a wooden bench covered in emerald green moss. Or you could say, Poppy and Linda sit together in a lush green part of the park. You're getting the same information apart in like less than half of the length, and that's gonna be great when you're trying to get people to read your script. Okay, so here's another big no-no unless you're the person who's gonna be directing or filming the script. Don't add camera or editing directions. Because this is kind of like stepping on the toes of the director or the editor and the cinematographer, and they'll likely just ignore your notes if you do put that in. So for example, while there are ways to format, like putting, say, I want this a wide angle, cut to like right now, pan to, unless, again, you're the one who's going to make the film in the end, you should probably avoid adding those. And similarly, parentheticals, which are those parentheses you put under character names before they speak. There is this, like, I don't know if it's a myth, I don't know if it's the truth, but every class I've been to, they're like, if you put parentheticals and an actor gets your script, they will take out a pen and cross out every parenthetical before they even read your script. So like, why put them if they're not gonna look at them? Don't, you know, if you wrote the character, how, like, what's true for you, like the actors are gonna read it and make it what's true to them. And it might be different, but it's still like, that's their craft, you know? Okay, so when to break the rules. So all of these formatting rules, again, like, it's good to know them before you break them, but here is like specific places where you could break them. Once you know the rules and your audience, if you're just writing for yourself and like your buddy, do whatever you want. If you're gonna direct the film, like I said, then it's totally helpful to have added notes about what size shots that you wanna have and stuff like that. And then also when you're rich and famous. If you read like any actors, like The Quiet Place, we had to read The Quiet Place, and the John Krasinski, I don't know how to say his name. He's the guy from The Office. Like, he's rich and famous. He wrote the script and directed it. And it was kind of crazy. There was just like random fonts with like big, like scrawl, like scratched, like graffiti looking stuff all over the script. And like half of it was in all caps. So you're good when you do that. Otherwise, keep it Courier with 12-point font, stuff like that. Okay, so here's a little bit. I'm not super familiar with like writing for different formats, but it is good to know that for different formats, there's slightly different scripts. So for TV shows, especially for like sitcoms, you usually put like, this is the cold open. This is the beginning of the first act. This is the end of the first act, because that's going to tell whoever's like creating it, and when they're airing it, where you're going to put commercials. So that's very important and nitpicky. And then also, I think these are really cool. This is what like a commercial or a music video script would look like. So the font is like this, is the same, but you split it into two columns, one for visuals and one for audio. And whatever happens at one point, the corresponding like audio or visual are next to each other. And of course, you're gonna have way more like descriptions of wides, mediums, close-ups, because it's a shorter like production line to make a commercial. The person who's writing it is probably gonna know the next person down the line, and they just rather, why add extra steps when you can make it really fast? And then for music videos specifically, there's also there's a color code. So lyrics are usually red or pink, narration's green, music is blue, and other like special effect noises are purple. And yeah, that's about that. So the screenplay rule of thumb is 1 page of script equals 1 minute of film. That's going to be super different depending on how descriptive you are, how long your dialogue is. Maybe your character is speaking really fast, really slow, but this is just like a good rule of thumb when you're planning to shoot. Like if you want to film like a 5-minute short, aim for like a 5-page script. And I have this little challenge. You don't have to do it, but if you want to like practice your newfound formatting skills, you could write a 2 to 3 page script about someone's morning routine during quarantine. And this could either be like realistic, like what is it, fiction versus nonfiction, or it could be like a totally fantasy made up world quarantine. But I always find it easy, even if you're making made up characters, to have like a connection to what's happening emotionally, because it makes stuff flow faster. Here's a couple helpful links that will be included in this PowerPoint. The first 3 are like script formatting programs. And then this one called Awesome Films. I don't know if all of the films are awesome that are in this link, but it has a bunch of PDFs of scripts that you could read. And that's like a totally helpful way to, if you have like no clue how to like get started is just to like read a bunch of scripts, see what other writers and writer directors have like come up with and how they start their story. And
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
A few slides back, you were saying like how like the speed of like the dialogue. Do you write that in the script? Like if the person's talking fast or slow?
So that would probably kind of lead into like parentheticals, and maybe
Yeah. Okay.
the actor would want to change that. But also, if your character is like dying and you have that in the script, then that's probably going to hint at the actors like you're going to be, you know, trying out your words. So yeah, there's no rules on that. Like you could hint at it.
Yeah.
Clear. Yes. Those are all the stuff that I have slides on, but I two other like little suggestions if you don't have like a script that you've already started is to do like a story dump of like everything in your mind, and then to pick out what you like to start making a treatment and a beat sheet for. That's especially helpful when you're trying to think of characters, because your actual script will probably have very few like hints into the whole background of every character. Like if you just bump into like a police officer in your script, he might only have like 2 lines, but for yourself, you could still have like a whole background for that character, and that'll just make it easier for you to write their dialogue and to like know their motivations right away. And then also mood boards are so helpful for starting stories and like broadening the world, even if it's based off of the real one. Like everyone's house, everyone's clothes look different. So I think that's a fun way to also, it's like a easy breezy, like I'm just gonna go on Pinterest and Google and find some photos, but you could feel productive at the same time.
That's funny because I was like doing that a few days ago.
Oh really? Yeah.
Very fun. Also, when you're like doing like the dream thing, how do you like write that? Like I know it's like switch of the scene, but like if they're flashing back.
Right. Yeah. So I've definitely seen where you just write it as another scene and then you do dash like flashback or like dream sequence. Or if you don't want it to be super clear that you could just do a normal log line, and then in your action you could just say like, in your descriptions, people might get that this is like not reality, but you could also just put like dash dream sequence. That's the same if you're doing like a montage. At the beginning, you would say montage, and then you would put all the different like actions that would happen within it. But I'm sure for like stuff like that, there's multiple different ways that whatever you like think works best, you could do. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions from our silence?
Tucker, it's Esther. Tucker, do you have a story you're already working on?
No.
No.
But I mean, maybe for the quarantine project, I was thinking about like flashing back on like what it used to be like. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Remember what it used to be like?
Yes.
Yeah, really cool dreams. Yeah, the good old days.
I just accidentally scrolled through my photos looking for like to post something about Star Wars Day, and I was like, oh, this is making me so sad. I totally
yeah.
I like almost cried over pictures of IKEA because I was like, I remember when I saw IKEA.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. IKEA's closed, right? I mean, no, maybe online.
Yeah, like whenever you see something now. Taylor says, my mic isn't working, but I was wondering how you stick to one idea when you're trying to choose a story to write.
Oh, that's a good. I'm glad. Like, I think that's a good problem to have, because it means that you have more than one idea. but it's also like, this is something that I've also heard a lot, and it totally makes sense that every choice that you make when you're creating a movie, from like each step, like pre-production to being in production, post, like every choice you make, you're killing like a different movie that could have been. So it's like a very dramatic process of like picking something and sticking with it. but if like I was in your position, I would absolutely like try to do like a beat sheet for both of, not like that fleshed out with like 40 beats, but like a beat sheet or a treatment for each of them, and then picking which one that you are drawn to more. And also totally like if you say, I really like this part of my treatment, let's see how I could work that theme or even like emotion into your main script that you're working on. Yeah, but that's definitely where like a beat sheet would be really helpful, because then you could see like, am I tying up all the loose ends? Am I creating like character arcs as well as the main story arc? I don't know if that, let me know if that answered your question or it was confusing.
Yasaman, do you want to talk a little bit about, just you touched on it like briefly in the don'ts, but around tropes and discussing why it's important that we kind of break some of those ideas?
Yeah, totally. See if I go over to my little trope page. There's so many slides. Oh, okay. So here we have.
Do you know what trope means?
We could, okay,
Yeah.
well, sorry. Okay, so tropes are like character, like stereotypical like character like molds or like plot molds. Esther might be better explaining that, but that's kind of how I see it. Like, for example, like the dumb blonde or the nerdy Asian, the angry Black woman, manic pixie girl, the mean mom, the dead mom, like, so just common things that you'll see throughout like media. Esther, do you have a?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just means like the character doesn't have a lot of dimensionality to them. So like you get exactly what that character is by just 3 words versus like, you know, John is a hero, you know, like where they get like when you do like a character side, which is sort of the character description, they get like a lot of meaty, complicated stuff. And normally if it's trope, they're just like not really there to move the story in any way, shape, or form. And so it just, and you hear about it a lot in, like, I'm not a screenwriter, but like you hear it a lot, and I'm definitely not an actor, but like actors or actresses saying, oh, I tried out for the like sexy bartender role or mom role, and there's nothing, they don't get any other information than just like 2 or 3 lines. 2 or 3 words, not even lines, like 2 or 3 words, like to
cookie cutter kind of.
Yeah,
totally. So it's like it's fun to also like play with them and like turn them like those tropes on their heads. Also, like for me, it shows like a sign of like when you see a big budget film that is still like falling into these tropes, it seems like lazy to me. Like, I don't know if you've seen Shazam, but like I thought it was a really great movie. It's like a new super movie, like hero movie. I think it's about like foster kids, but they still have this one character who is Asian and is the like nerdy science kid. And they easily could have had him, like there was so many like such a broad like range of cast that they could have just like they just add a little spice and like switch them around. Like it seemed kind of lazy that they're like, oh, we'll just have him as the nerdy Asian kid because everyone will automatically like assume they know everything about him. So yeah, so I feel like if you write from experience and like you know yourself and you know like your friends and family, and even if that's only a small part of the characters that you write, like they're gonna be like different and unique. And I always try, sometimes I'll like start being like, I'm not gonna make this based off of anybody that I know or myself, but I always get the best feedback on ones that like hold true to people that I know in real life, because like for me that's an easy way to like start by fleshing out a character like really well. And then I'm sure once you're like really good at it, you could just pull them out of thin air. But